in this chapter, we will study about how man's interaction with nature created problems with his increased economic activity. Under cultural landscapes, we will discuss about the aspects and role of man in cultural landscapes and environmental changes brought about by man with his economic activity. Cultural landscapes are produced by the interaction of man and nature in an area, and they reflect the social and economic aims and the technical abilities of the people living there. The task of the geographer has been to describe and analyze these landscapes in order to understand the imprint of man on the earth, and a large number of regional studies have been produced to achieve this. Attention has also been given to the ways in which landscapes change through time and to the role that man plays in this change. There are two aspects of this cultural landscape that must be considered. The first of these is the functional landscape, which is produced by the economic activity. The various economic activities of man has a distinct imprint on the environment. Industrial activities produce quite different landscapes forms from agricultural activities, and within agriculture itself, the landscapes of viticulture, it means grape cultivation, or intensive rice cultivation, or the extensive wheat farming are quite distinct. The cultural landscape is the form produced by the interaction of man and environment, but in recent years much more attention has been placed on the process of this interaction, especially on the role played by culturally produced perceptions. It is being increasingly recognized that man's relationship with the environment is indirect, in that it operates through the way that man perceives the environment, and the study of these perception and the ways in which they influence behavior is a major area of the interest for a geographer. The idea that man-environment relation should be studied as a controlled system has found strong support among many geographers. The system provides a coherent framework within which the interaction between man and environment can be studied. But because of the problems of scale and complexity, it is difficult to isolate and quantify the various elements of the system. However, there is one major element that must be analyzed, since the notion of control emphasizes man's role as an active agent in the system. Culture is the totality of human experience, but it is made up of many different types of culture. Urban industrial cultures have a very different set of relationship with the environment from rural agricultural culture, and has each produced distinctive landscape which divide the world up into wide range of regional units. The study of the cultural landscapes produced by these different cultures has been a major area of study in the human geography. The domestication of the plants has started around 10,000 years in the Southwest Asia. Since then, it has spread in all the continents substantially and has been intensified to meet the growing needs of the millions of people. Agriculture has transformed the landscape, and the application of modern agricultural biotechnology has resulted into considerable environmental changes. Many of these changes are a direct result of manipulating biochemical sciences and energy flows, and relate especially to the use of chemical fertilizers and crop protection chemicals. While landscape change is often rapid and observable, many of the changes that have occurred and are continuing to occur because of the application of agricultural chemicals are less easy to pinpoint. Significant environmental impacts have ensued inadvertent consequences of such high technology agriculture. Soil erosion, salinization and desertification are some of the problems which are becoming increasingly alarming in the intensively cultivated cereal growing areas in the semi-arid regions of the world. Agricultural methods in the last 2 decades aimed at more intensive food production have also caused the destruction of natural habitats at the hitherto unprecedented rate, a process that has generated considerable acrimony between agriculturalists and conservationists. Moreover, the use of crop protection chemicals has had widespread ecological repercussions. It is not only the developed countries in which the environmental changes occurred, agriculture in the developing countries is also becoming more technologically rather than traditionally based. Although world population doubled over this period, food production rose even faster, so that the world's croplands and pasture lands support an additional 1.5 billion people today. Gains have been particularly significant in the developing world. Per capita food supplies in some of the developing countries like India, Pakistan, Brazil, Mexico, etc. rose from less than 2000 calories per day in 1961 to more than 2900 calories in 2013, driven by the combination of better seeds, expanded irrigation and high fertilizer and pesticide use, what has become known as green revolution, as well as by the rapid growth in food imports from the rest of the world. Yield plateau or yield stagnation has been detected in the case of wheat, rice and millet in the developing countries. Unfortunately, about 800 millions of the world's people, 200 million of them children, suffer from chronic undernutrition. The intensification of agriculture in the developing countries is causing environmental degradation. The use and misuse of chemical fertilizers and new rotation of crops are changing the soil chemistry. Moreover, poor agricultural practices are degrading the soil. Soil making processes are notoriously slow, requiring from 200 to 2000 years to form just 2.5 centimeter of topsoil under normal agricultural conditions. More soil friendly practices therefore need to be adopted. These methods include contour farming, terracing, vegetative barriers and improved land use practices at the farm level. The high yielding varieties of rice and wheat diffused in the developing countries require high energy inputs in the form of water, chemical fertilizers and crop protection chemicals. Out of these, crop protection chemicals bring radical changes in the chemical properties of soil and thus transform the environment. Crop protection chemicals are compounds that are artificially produced on a large scale to improve the efficiency of crop by eliminating competition from weeds. Chemicals are also used in apple, mango and orange orchards to protect fruit from insects and pests. There are various groups of pesticides that are designated according to the target species. The main pesticide categories are herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, etc. The ICMR conducted a survey and revealed the existence of excessive residue of DDT and other pesticides in bovine milk. Lead, copper, zinc, cadmium and arsenic were also detected in rice, wheat, maize, cotton, sesame and fruits. It is because of the contaminated feed to animals and spraying of crop fodder and orchards. The contamination of food with chemicals is a major public health problem in India. The crop production chemicals undoubtedly enhance agricultural production and bring substantial environmental changes. The use of organochlorine such as DDT has had a profound effect on wildlife. Herbicides to control broad-leaved weeds have altered the balance of weed population, so that in solving one problem, others are created. In order to overcome the new problems, new plant protection chemicals are required, which bring more changes in the environment, and thus the vicious cycle continues. A soil is a complex mixture of rock particle, organic material, living organism, air and water. Under natural condition, soil is constantly being formed by physical and chemical decomposition of rock material and by the decay of organic matter. It is simultaneously being eroded. For soil erosion, is as natural a process as soil formation. Soil erosion is a worldwide phenomena. The rate of soil erosion in a given area is influenced by the rainfall erosivity, volume of runoff, wind strength, relief, slope angle, slope length, slope shortening, length of wind fetch and shelter belts. The rate of soil erosion also depends on the pressure of population on arable land, cropping patterns, following crop rotation, land management, use of fertilizers and tillage practices. According to one estimate, 75,000 million tons of productive soil is eroded annually. In India, the problem of soil erosion is quite serious, as about 6,000 million tons of soil is being eroded annually. In Turkey, about 75% of the arable land is affected by soil erosion. In China and India, about 60% of their cultivated land is affected by wind and water erosion. Soil erosion not only affects the areas from which soil is removed, but also affects the environment where it is deposited. Such deposits, if take place in lakes and ponds, destroy aquatic ecosystem by adding more nutrients, notably nitrogen and phosphorus. It is therefore necessary to adopt remedial measures to combat soil erosion and to protect the neighboring agro ecosystem. If we see the world map here, we can see how India is affected by soil erosion and how the world countries have different at various stages of soil erosion. Salinization is also an important problem the cultivators are confronted with. After the Industrial Revolution, there had been more use of chemical fertilizers in the developed countries, and developing countries are also applying fertilizers in substantial quantities, mainly in the irrigated tracts. The application of nitrate, phosphate and potassic fertilizers after the Second World War has changed the soil chemistry. Although the production of cereals and other crops has enhanced, these fertilizers are detrimental to the health of the soil. The most significant of these in the cultural eutrophication of fresh aquatic ecosystems that are in receipt of drainage from agricultural land. Consequently, many wetland habitats have suffered and their fauna and flora suffered a detrimental change. The ecosystem of Dal Lake, Vular, Nagin and Anchar lakes of Kashmir have been impaired to the extent that the very survival of these lakes has become a point of great concern for the planners and policy makers. The causes of desertification are numerous. Climate change is an important cause for desertification. Yet, the increasing human pressure exerted through overgrazing, deforestation for fuel wood and expansion of agriculture are the main causes of desertification. Although these sparsely populated arid and semi-arid lands cover about 33% of the earth's surface, they are supporting a population of over 700 million or nearly 8% of the total world population. The basic economic activity of these people is nomadic herding. In recent years, there has however been large scale sedentarization and agricultural development. The development of irrigation and intensification of agriculture in the highly fragile ecosystems of the desert and semi-desert areas have brought radical changes in their environment. In some cases of African, Asian and Latin American countries, land has become so degraded that it is worthless agriculturally and uneconomic for pastoral activities. Removal of the natural vegetation, overgrazing and overcropping have resulted in nutrient depletion, widespread soil erosion and desertification. The construction of dams for the development of canal irrigation has transformed the character of landscape. The mismanagement of canal water has created the problems of salinization and waterlogging that counteracts the beneficial effects. In some extreme cases, irrigation systems have been abandoned, contributing further to land that is annually lost to agriculture. Desertification is a long-term degradation of dry lands resulting either from overuse by man and his animals or from natural causes such as climatic fluctuations. It leads to loss of vegetation cover, loss of topsoil by wind or water erosion, loss of useful plant production as a result of sanitization or excess sedimentation associated with sand dunes and sheet of torrents. The spatial patterns of desertification show that the tropical and subtropical lands are more prone to desertification. According to an estimate made by the United Nations, about 40% of African continent's non-desert land is in danger of desert. Nearly 33% of the Asia's land and about 20% of Latin America's land are similarly endangered. In countries where desertification is particularly extensive and severe like Algeria, Ethiopia, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Mali, Chad, Sudan and Niger, per capita food production declined by 45% between 1950 to 1990. The resulting threat of starvation spurs population of the affected areas to increase their farming and livestock pressure on the denuded land, further contributing to their desertification. It has been suggested that Mali may be the first country in the world rendered uninhabitable by environmental destruction. Deforestation is also one of the important causes of environmental change. About 30% of the earth's surface is covered with forest. The human pressure on forest has, however, significantly increased in recent decades, especially after the World War II. The need for more agricultural land, expanded demand for fuel and commercial wood and more demand for beef can be satisfied by replacing forest with clear grazing and agricultural lands. If you see the map which is given here, how the areas which have been shown here about the depletion of, or we can say the forest or deforestation of the forest. The rapid deforestation, particularly that of tropical region, is contributing to the enhanced greenhouse effect. Moreover, removal of the protective vegetation cover and its replacement with a crop or pasture often results in accelerated soil erosion that worsens nutrient deficiency. Rapid oxidation of soil organic matter is also promoted. As a result, the crop productivity declines, which further results in serious economic consequences. The forests play a vital role in maintaining the oxygen and carbon balance of the earth. Moreover, forest destruction changes surface and air temperature, moisture content and reflectivity. Conservation of forest to grasslands, for example, increase the surface temperature, raises air temperatures above and the treeless ground and therefore increases the water holding capacity of the warmer air. As winds move the hotter, drier air, it tends to exert a drying effect on adjacent forest and agricultural lands. It is calculated that cutting the forest of South America on a large scale have raised regional temperatures from 3 to 5 degrees centigrade, which in turn would extend the dry season and greatly disrupt not only regional but also global climates. The major setback of deforestation of tropical forest will be the loss of a major part of biological diversity of the earth. Of the estimated 5 to 10 million plant and animal species believed to exist on the earth, a maximum of 40 to 50% are native to the tropical rainforest. Many of the tropical plants, example rice, millet, cassava, yam, taro, banana, pineapple and sugar cane, to name but a very few well known ones. The tropical rainforests are in addition the world's main storehouse of medicinal plants and insects. The destruction of these forests will deprive humans of unfold potential benefits that might never be realized. The forests have numerous protective and productive functions for human beings and their conservation is essential for the survival of mankind. The use, misuse and overuse of savanna grassland have also resulted into many environmental problems. About 20% of the earth's surface is occupied by savanna. These grasslands are located between the equatorial rainforest and the arid and semi-arid hot deserts. Savannas are most extensive in Africa, where these occupy 65% of the land area. They also occupy 60% of Australia and 45% of South America and 10% of India. The savannas are generally used for nomadic herding, shifting cultivation, semi-permanent cultivation, intensive dry land agriculture involving rotations and intercropping, and more extensive floodland cultivation where small scale irrigation is practiced. There is evidence that land degradation in savanna is accelerating as a consequence of overgrazing, firing and incautious management to enhance productivity. The world savanna lands are highly vulnerable ecosystem. They present both considerable potential and considerable environmental degradation. As in many of the cases of environmental change, social, historical, cultural and economic factors are responsible for the existing land use practices in the savannas and their environmental degradation. In the case of savannas are not judiciously utilized, there is a strong possibility of these productive grasslands being transformed into unproductive semi-arid and arid regions of the world like that of their neighboring hot deserts. Apart from agriculture and industry, environmental changes have also occurred in recent decades owing to tourism and recreation. The standard of living has increased, especially in the developed world, and it has brought it a higher disposable income and increased leisure time. The average working time in the developed countries is now about 36 hours as compared with 60 hours in 1900. Most of the people have car and personal transport, which gives greater access to rural and natural areas. In developed countries, the rural areas are increasingly being exploited as a source of recreation and as the places for sporting events. Greater affluence and improved air travel have also encouraged an increase in tourism to such an extent that it is now the world's third largest industry and accounts for 20% of world's GNP. Tourism is also becoming an important industry in the developing countries. The tourism and recreation in the countryside and natural areas damage the vegetation by trampling, to accelerate the loss of soil and to disturb animals. Sports like skiing, boating, camping, trekking, riding and picnicking adversely affect the landscape and environment. Accidental fires can have devastating effect on landscape. Such fires damage the environment more severely if they occur in summer season after a long dry period. In such cases, seed banks are impaired, anyone below ground roots may be damaged. Thus, recovery of ecosystem is slow. Tourism, which is developing as an industry, is also bringing significant environmental changes, and people move from their home to the tourist places temporarily. The objective of the tourist may be many as they undertake travel to enjoy cultural attributes, scenic beauty, wildlife and marine features. The uncontrolled tourism result in the destruction of landforms, fauna and flora that first motivated the activity. Planning and management of tourism is necessary if tourism industry is to continue as a source of income in developed and developing countries. The people and tourists need to be educated so that they may become part of the environmental protection movement. Since the horizontal expansion of agriculture is not possible, intensification of agriculture is being done with advanced techniques of biotechnology. Biotechnology has been a wide range of applications in agriculture, among which are crop improvement, biological control of pest and the enhancement of nitrogen fixation, all of which influence environmental quality. Biotechnology has, however, brought civilization to the verge of another environmental experiment in the context of the release of genetically engineered organisms. Currently, there is much international debate relating to circumstances in which bioengineered species should be released into the environment and whether or not that impact will be entirely beneficial. Genetic engineering thus constitutes an important potential agent of environmental change. The industrialized urban ecosystems inevitably lead to huge quantities of domestic, industrial and nuclear waste. The high energy consumption and high population densities of the urban society give rise to large quantities of waste, water and sewage as well as domestic rubbish. The contaminated water supplies cause epidemics of diseases like typhoid and cholera. These epidemics are quite frequent not only in the developing countries, but also in the developed countries in which sewage treatment processes are widely employed. Sewage is rich in nutrient and phosphate, of which only 50% may be removed after treatment and rest is released into drainage system, which may pollute the water of lakes and ponds. Sewage can also cause pollution by promoting bacterial growth. This problem has become quite acute in India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan and Philippines. The disposal of domestic rubbish needs landfill sites in the vicinity of urban ecosystems. The landfills result in obnoxious odors, or we say foul smell. Such landfills also generate methane and hydrogen sulfide, which are injurious to health. Many times the landfills become potential dangers and points of health hazard for the neighboring communities. In the developing countries, the condition is worst as many of the people live on or near the landfills. The industrial waste consists of chemicals, detergent, metals and synthetic compounds besides the solid waste and garbage. The heavy metal chemicals pollute the water system, which may be a threat to aquatic life and human health. It has been reported that mercury poisoning impairs sensory, visual, auditory functions, especially in unborn fetuses. There are several examples of methyl mercury poisoning that have proved fatal and relatively large scale. One of the best known such example is that occurred in Japan in the year 1953-75 period by the discharge of methyl mercury from a local chemical plant. The mercury entered marine food chain and mercury rich residues became concentrated in higher trophic level comprised fish. These were harvested and consumed by local fishermen, resulting in about 100 deaths and disabled up to 1000 people. The discharge of heavy metal rich industrial effluent can also cause health problems. Moreover, underground waters and soils may also be contaminated by heavy metals. The increased nuclear fuel is becoming one of the major sources of non-conventional energy. At present, about 4% of the world energy requirements are obtained from nuclear power. There are many nuclear reactors in operation, especially in the developed countries. Their total number in the world is about 390, out of which 37 and 34 are in Britain and France respectively. The nuclear waste contains radioactive isotopes which generate large quantities of heat. These radioactive elements remain active many hundreds of thousands of years. The disposal of nuclear waste is therefore a serious danger to the biosphere. Moreover, it has been found that nuclear waste have created ecological problems, and it has been reported that incidences of child leukemias occur in population close to nuclear reactor. In October 1993, the Japanese government protested against the Russia for its nuclear waste disposal into the Japan Sea in the vicinity of Japan. The domestic, industrial and nuclear waste and their disposal are the serious health hazard which may endanger the biosphere. In order to control the air, water and soil pollution by the fossil and nuclear fuels and heavy metals containing chemicals released by the industries, it is imperative to adopt drastic measures if the human civilization is to be protected. This necessitates international political cooperation and much forethought for future energy policies. We have seen how cultural landscapes have brought substantial changes in the environment. The technology helped in the expansion and intensification of agriculture. The ability to manipulate the environment did not develop trouble free. The records clearly attest to problems of environmental management such as overgrazing, declining soil fertility, soil erosion and salinization. Such problems are quite important and serious and today have been